The risk management lifecycle is something I think you need to know in depth, both for your day-to-day job and definitely also for the exam. It is such an integral part of what we do as IT security professionals. So let's start out with this very simple equation. Risk equals threat times vulnerability. If we have the vulnerability and there is no threat, well then there is no risk. If there's a threat but no vulnerability, again, no risk. Both need to be present. A vulnerability is just some sort of weakness in one of our applications, our infrastructure, or somewhere else in our layered defense. It's just a weakness. Now, if no one can exploit that weakness, it doesn't really matter. There has to be a threat, which means that the vulnerability is exploitable and then it is exploited by a threat actor. We are going to spend a little more time here because it is so integral to everything that we do. It is important for your job and it is important for the certification. Most of IT security, as you know, is an iterative process. This is no different. We go through the full cycle and then we start over. We are never done because both our environment and the threat landscape is fluid. It is always evolving. We might add new systems, new servers, change our network infrastructure, add new applications, change old ones. So for everything we have, we go through the risk management lifecycle. And the one we're looking at today has 4 phases. You might know or have read about ones that have 3 or 5 or 6 phases. For the exam, that doesn't really matter. You're not going to get a question on phase 3 is what. What you are going to get questions on is, in this situation, we have done this, we have done that. What do we do next? What do we do first? What is the best response in this situation? Since what we do, the order we do it in, and when we do it is the same in any of them, you need to understand the flow, what is done when, how it is done, but it doesn't matter that it is in phase 2 or phase 4. So now that you're clear on the why and the how, let's look at the phases. Phase 1, risk identification. Obviously, we need to know that there is a risk. Then we do a risk assessment. How bad is this risk? What are the potential impacts? We then go to risk response and mitigation. How do we want to react to that risk? What can we do to mitigate the risks that are big enough? And then in the final phase, risk and control, monitoring and reporting. As mentioned, this is iterative. That is also why it has the little arrows that goes in a circle. In this lecture, we will cover risk identification. In later lectures, we will cover the other 3 phases. For risk identification, if you are familiar with PMI's project management methodology and lifecycle, then you know in the first phase, initiation, that is where we identify our team. We find the team members that we need from across the enterprise. If our scope is too narrow, if we don't involve enough stakeholders, then we might miss some big risks, which is why we need someone from the entire enterprise and someone who is allowed to make decisions. We should not be okay with them just sending someone random from the team because they have to. If they send someone over who's not completely clear on their processes or don't completely understand what they do, well then how are they going to help us identify risks? Let's say all that works out well. We have our team assembled. Then we need to figure out, for this risk assessment, what is in scope, just like we do with project management. What is in scope is just as important as what is out of scope. What are we doing this risk assessment for? Is it for a single department? Is it the entire enterprise? What type of assets are we looking at? What type of threats? Having that completely clearly defined scope is going to help us be successful. If the scope is too vague, well then how do we know that we're done? How do we know what we're actually trying to achieve? Once we have the scope, then we need to figure out which methods are we going to use for our risk assessment. That could be qualitative or quantitative risk analysis or both, and we will cover those in a later lecture. And from their names, you can probably guess what they are. Qualitative, it's quality. And quality is subjective. It is your opinion. It is not a hard substantiated fact. And this is what we do first. We rate all the assets we have on how critical they are. How bad is it if we are compromised? And then we rate the likeliness. Once we have that, then we move into quantitative risk analysis. And here also you can hear quantity. It is a number. If in our qualitative risk analysis the numbers were high enough, then we here go in and put numbers on those feelings. This will take a lot of work. And since a lot of work is involved, this is not something we do on all assets. I have worked in places where we pretty much never did it, which is also dangerous. Just like anything else, we need to find the right balance. After that, we pick the tools that we want to use. What are we going to use to analyze the risks that we have? There are a great deal of amazing tools that we can use. And of course, here you use your due diligence. You do the research and you find exactly the right tools that actually matches the needs of your environment and your enterprise. Since this is the perfect world, we obviously have senior management's buy-in. They think the process and what we are doing is a great idea and something that the enterprise needs. Then we need to very clearly understand what are the acceptable risk levels, what kind of risk appetite does our organization have, which is, remember, set by senior management. If you are in an organization that has done this 50 times, well then they probably have all the right processes in place and they have identified all their assets. If all the assets are not identified or they're just not sure, well then you will spend a good deal of time identifying assets. And this is so critical because if we don't know we have it, how can we protect it? Assets are both tangible and intangible. And tangible just means something you can physically touch. Our equipment, our facility, the physical things that we need to function as a business. The intangible ones are the ones we can't touch. That is the data on our system, our trade secrets, our reputation, things you cannot touch. Let's say we're going to do risk analysis on a server. Then we need to figure out how much is it worth. The physical, tangible objects, the server itself, how much did we pay for it? What is it going to cost us to get a new one? After we bought it, how much did it take to get it ready for production? What cost was involved? How much time did it take? How important is that server within our business? If the server got stolen, how much would it be worth for a competitor? How much have we spent maintaining and protecting the asset? And are we going to incur any financial losses if the server is no longer there? If that server was our e-commerce web server and we now lose $100,000 a day because we can't do e-commerce, well, that is a loss then. What if the server contains customer data? Is it protected well enough? If we lose it, what is it going to do to us financially if we get fined? And what is it going to do to our reputation? Let's say the server gets stolen and the encryption on the server was unfortunately not strong enough. We lost a ton of customer data, both transaction data and personal identifiable information. Let's say for this example, we get fined $100,000, which to you and me might be a lot of money, but if our company makes $100 million a year or is valued at $100 million, well, it's not so much then. But the loss of the server could cause a significant drop in stock prices, let's say 20%. If we are valued at $100 million and it drops 20%, well then our shareholders just lost $20 million. If in the other example where we have $100 million revenue per year, let's say this breach is so bad that 20% of our customers takes their business elsewhere. Again, a drop in revenue of $20 million. And this is why it is so critical that we look at the whole picture. Sure, I can go out and buy a new server for $15,000, but I definitely can't fix the prices of our stocks or the lost revenue with $15,000 or $100,000 or $1 million. So the loss of an asset is not just the asset itself. It is the tangible, the intangibles, and everything that comes with that. Most of the places where I have worked, they've had an okayish asset inventory, but there was definitely stuff that wasn't anywhere. At some point, I did a large data center move, and we kept finding servers that no one really knew what they did, no one really knew who owned them, how they got there. They were just magically there. Some were really old, and some were new, which meant that I spent an incredible amount of hours trying to track down what they did. This was at a hospital. Other places, you might just have unplugged the cables and see what happens. At a hospital, no. And in a streamlined and well-functioning business, this would never have happened. Because whenever they would try to plug something into a network port, they should get no access. Before that, they shouldn't even have access to the data center. They should be a data center team or a server team and not just random analysts that install their own equipment. As you can hear, I still feel a little bit sore about this. We did manage to find every owner for every system, but it did also give me some 80-hour plus work weeks. And with that, let's move to the next lecture.